welcome to another Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is BryanCPSteele, and I will be your nerd today and any other day that you watch one of my silly little shows. Hey everybody, I hope that this finds you well. I hope that you are enjoying life and staying free of all of the things that weigh you down, because today we are going to talk about how awesome and amazing and difficult it is to sometimes be an at-home full-time freelancer. I started this channel to talk about the industry and give hints and tips, and sometimes I feel like I just talk about all my cool projects that I'm working on. And recently I've gotten a string of emails and requests and things of people asking for advice, stuff that I normally give on panels and stuff at shows. But that's why I started this channel to begin with. So you clicked on the thumbnail. You know what this is about. I wanted to give five helpful tips that I follow personally to being a successful stay-at-home member of the industry, a successful remote freelancer. And I would call myself successful. I'm not patting myself on the back or anything, but I've done pretty well for myself as far as this industry is concerned, and it just makes me want to share that with the folks that have asked, how do I make it work? How do I do all the things? And that is that's a long story, but I figured I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I was like, you know what, I can at least come up with 5 helpful hints, and that would make a decent episode. And who knows, maybe if this episode does really well, gets a bunch of likes, earns us a bunch of subscribes, maybe I will do another 5. But either way, I wanted to at least share the things that I think that help me be as prolific as I am. I get a lot of comments about people who are like, man, you never stop working. Man, you are constantly on like 6 projects at a time. That is my personal workload. That's something that I think I can handle. It's something that I have, made part of my industry life experience. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's everybody's, but I do think that there are some, tips and tricks that help me make that a reality and make it function the way it should. So here are my 5 ideas that I grabbed, and just saying with thought, I kind of really thought it over. It was like, what would I do if I did like a top 5? So starting with number 5. My note here says ease into it. I think that's it, meaning that this kind of lifestyle, this kind of workload, this kind of stress and pressure is not for everyone. For some people, it can be really mentally, emotionally, and physically daunting and harmful if you aren't someone who can keep up with that, or spend all your time second guessing and talking to a client and be like, yeah, I can do this, and then you start freaking out that you can't, and rather than doing a bunch of harm to yourself by being like, okay, cool, next week I'm quitting my job and I'm quitting my 9 to 5, and I'm going to do industry stuff full time all the time from home. Ease into it. Do pick up some small gigs, so a few thousand words here and there. Ask the company if there's a strict deadline, or if the deadline is not fluid. Companies don't want to hear you being like, I know you said a deadline, but wishy-washy. No, more like, don't grab something that's a 2-week turnaround if you don't know whether or not you can do that. Ask if, be like, hey, when does this need to be turned in? When do try and set the right expectations. That way you're not getting an immediate kind of false, false indication of what you're capable of, or setting yourself up for a very premature failure and then deciding that you can't do it because you tried to take on too much right at the very beginning. Take the equivalent of industry part-time gigs. Start with one, focus on it, get it done, get it in the can, get it off to the company, and then look for another. Start slowly figure out what your pace really is, because not everybody can keep up with this full time. Not everybody is ready to do 10-hour days in their workspace, 12-hour days in their workspace. Not everybody can give up weekends. Sometimes you might be a parent of one of my best friends. He really wants to get into this and into this industry, and he's dabbled quite a bit, but there are times of the year where he is gone every weekend with his kids' dance recital stuff. And that's because it's extremely important to his family and his children and everything for that to happen. And if he signed on for something that might require him to work a weekend or two, and it ends up in that chunk of dance competition time or whatever, it would not, he would end up pulling his hair out, missing those days that he would normally have to spend working. So I think that's tip number 5, is just basically ease yourself into the situation, take small bites, figure out if it's something that you want and can do, and as you get more projects and more exposure and larger projects, and you'll slowly start to notice that maybe you're taking 2 part-time gigs at the same time, or maybe you take on a much larger something that's a lot more word count, so you find yourself spending longer time in the workspace trying to make the most out of your time, and then suddenly you take a look at your logbook at the time that you've put in, and you go, man, this is almost a full-time job. And then you start comparing it. Are you making enough money to make it a full-time job? Just basically don't just jump off into the deep end and being like, all right, that's it, I am a full-time game writer, unless you are ready to unless you know for a fact that you're ready. And one of the best ways for you to know that you're ready is test small bites, ease into the projects, ease into the lifestyle, and figure out if that's good for you. Number 4, and this is one that I probably have one of the hardest times with. There's going to be a few of these bullet points that are on here because I wish I did them more, and I know that I would probably be healthier and more successful if I did, but life is what life is, and this is a learn from my mistakes. Number 4 is take breaks. I know that sounds stupid, but it is very easy to get into the work zone and just smash out on, because maybe you're on a project that you really like. You like, this is a really cool thing, and you you're super inspired. Maybe it is a project that has a short deadline, and you're pressuring yourself into push. Or maybe it is literally just you've got so much on your plate that you're not paying attention. It is very easy to get completely consumed by your work. And when I say take breaks, I mean sometimes it could be as much as get up, get out of your workspace, and go make a sandwich. Or have like a nice sit down, non-working, not eat a quick bowl of ramen at your desk, but like an actual sit down. You throw a YouTube show thing on your phone, or throw something on the TV, or maybe just be alone with your thoughts. I know that's dangerous for some of us, but give yourself a chance to remove yourself from the work stress, from the project stress, if only for a little while. For some of us, those of us that have physical situations, i.e., larger than they should be, with arthritis in their hip and lumbar. Sometimes taking breaks is necessary physically, like just getting up, getting your blood moving, wake yourself up, just kind of reset the old internal timer before you get back to work. Now, there is a caveat attached to take breaks, is sometimes you are so in the zone that the work is moving really well. You are absolutely focused. In the case of, like, if you're writing fiction, the words are just flying onto the page. In the case of, maybe a particular element of, like, design, the math is mathing and everything is coming together, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm almost done with this rule engineering, or I'm almost done with this, this test theory. It's written out. It does what it's supposed to do. You can always set yourself up for, I'm going to take a break when I'm done with this. When I'm done with this chapter, when I'm done with this rules engagement, when I'm done with this, memo to the client, or whatever. You can be like, I'm going to take a break then. Just make sure you stick to that. Don't tell yourself that, get yourself mentally and emotionally and physically ready to go take a break at the end of this chapter, and then blow past the end of that chapter and into the next one because you were still in the zone. If you tell yourself if you schedule yourself and tell yourself you're going to take a break, do that. Do the thing that you did. And also, it is, on a grander scale, take a break also means, if you need a day or two between projects to kind of get chores done around the house, or maybe go see your parents, or go see a movie, just if you need a day or two to kind of reset everything before you jump into another project, to level out your stress, to kind of bring you back to that zero line before you jump into the next thing, do it. It's good. It's good for your brain. It's good. And I honestly do think that it will benefit the projects if you are not stressed out and trying to, smash through as much as you can. Number 3, and this is probably one of the most important, sorry, my nose itches. This is probably one of the most important, and occasionally the hardest to do, and that is create a devoted workspace. So behind me, you see the studio. This is the part of the studio. The other half of the studio over there is the painting area. Now, this is also where I keep all of my game products and things, all of my resource books, and that is there's a double version to that. There's 2 reasons for that. One, because I've got so much game industry stuff that having it all over the house would be maybe not great for my family, but also it would be difficult for me to have all of those resource projects, things that I might need to read, or I might go, what did the original My Little Pony Tales of Equestria do? I go grab that book. Having them all in this same space means that if I need something dedicated to work, whether it's a file or a book or a note or some dice or whatever, I know that I don't have to really leave the workspace mentality, because it's all in here. It all is devoted to the work, and maybe not all at once, and maybe not each individual thing, but it does mean that when I'm in here, once I enter that room or that door and close the door, I'm in work mode. This is my place. Now, I do occasionally do some things that aren't work in here. I do, my hobby stuff for fun, and occasionally I might have an online podcast, or maybe someone invites me to do a remote role playing or something like that. That does happen in here from time to time, But for the most part, this space is created specifically for me to work. And the reason why I say that is important is because, and it can change. In this case, I have a full studio room. I know some people, when I was at the apartment back, 15 years ago, my dedicated workspace was a corner of the apartment that I had set the table up, like my desk to one side and like a bookshelf. I had kind of created almost a little cubicle out of my space. Now, that one was not as efficient because I also had a very young child and I needed to make sure that I could keep an eye on said young child. So there was no real walls or anything. I think the best dedicated workspaces are ones where you can close off the rest of the world and go, I am working. Please leave me leave me alone. But it is almost about, like I've tried to use my laptop and go to a coffee shop and get work done, or I've attempted to try and get work done at night at conventions. One of my besties, and I love her to death, Elisa Teague, she frequently does work at conventions, after hours, like, slams out some deadline words right there at the end of the night. I do not know how she does it. I don't understand I've tried multiple times, and yeah, I've gotten some work done at a show that had to be done, but it was subpar work and it was rushed. And the whole time I was working on it, I kept telling myself, man, this is inefficient. And that's exactly it, is that, this, because it wasn't in my space, it wasn't in my work zone mode. And I really do think that having all of my resources, even if I don't need them, having them all at figuratively at arm's length, helps my productivity. Even if I never look at them, I know that it's right here. I know that I can reach and grab my Warzone book if I need to refer to something, where I don't have to go open up a PDF and find and wheel through, where I don't have to open up a Word doc from something that was published in physical form that's right over there in my bookshelf. I don't have to find the Word doc from 8 years ago to look up something because it's right there. I just grab the book. And I know there are some that have no problem working completely digitally from anywhere in a space. I really do believe that having a dedicated workspace is infinitely better than trying to be the workspace and just take it wherever you are. I think it also helps. There's another bullet point that we're going to talk about here in a minute, but it also helps make it so your work life and your personal space, like the rest of you, it is separate but equal. Like it is two halves of the same whole, but you can definitely draw that line that says, no, I'm not working right now. This is one of the things that I have the hardest time with, and when we get to that bullet point, I'll explain more. But I think trying to find a bullet point 3, devoted space, trying to find a way to create. Not everybody's home will be able to do this. Not everybody will have that extra bedroom that they convert into a studio. I do know that if you really are struggling, I learned about these just recently. There's places, so down in Indianapolis, it's like an hour away. One of my playtest groups, we meet at a place that it's effectively a warehouse full of mini offices, and the mini offices are all rentable, and they just basically have their, instead of owning an office building or renting out a full building, they just rent out a couple of rooms in this collective workspace. And I think that that's cool. And I think that if I was in a situation where I didn't have this studio. Like I was still living in the apartment, or I was in a home that did not have the ability to create a devoted studio. I think that a service like that, a location like that, that says you can rent out your workspace, as long as it wasn't, just ridiculously expensive. I don't know. I've never had to look. As long as it wasn't like crazy expensive and making having a workspace a detriment, I think that's cool. That's a neat idea to create your workspace elsewhere rather than trying to shoehorn it into a home that that's not going to benefit for, that it's not going to be able to facilitate that, or trying to just sort of wing it from a laptop at every Starbucks that you come across. I think that's a cool concept, and I think most larger cities probably have access to that. And also, especially with the cost of gas right now and all that, obviously having a studio in the home having a workspace in the home is far, far easier than having to drive a half an hour or whatever to go to your rented workspace. But I think that no matter what, the concept there is, if you have a dedicated workspace, if you have set aside some real estate in your home, that you can kind of sink your mindset into work mode when you go into it. It's honestly the biggest reason why I don't play very many video games on my computer. My computer, I've got Steam. I've got the things that I need to do, but generally speaking, I don't play games in here unless they're like playtests. Because when I'm in here and I'm on this computer, I'm in work mode. I am working on the next project. I'm checking my emails. My Discord's chirping because someone's asking me rules questions. The idea of coming to this room and doing something that's mostly not work related, barring when I paint. And even then, most of the stuff I'm painting is probably for playtests or my own personal, whatever game I'm working on at that time. Very rarely do I paint anything that's just for fun or others. But it is easier for me to, when my friends come up, my friends say, hey, there's this awesome new game that's on Steam that we're going to get together and play. I have a much easier time telling them, no, I'm not going to buy that game because I don't really play that on my computer. Is it an Xbox game? Sure, because I can do that elsewhere when I'm outside of this space. Does that make any sense? I don't know. I hope it does. What bullet point 3 is saying is having a devoted workspace is absolutely one of the key elements to taking that step from this is a hobby that I occasionally make money at to no, this is my job. We'll get to that in a second. Also, as a side note, if you do have a dedicated workspace, at least in the state of Indiana, well, I guess it'd be federal, at least in the U.S., if you have a dedicated workspace, whatever percentage square footing of the home that it is, you actually can write off that percentage of your utilities, of your real estate tax. There's a tax write-off situation when it comes to a dedicated workspace in your home. So, just as a side note, bullet point number 2, and I think this is almost a life bullet point rather than just an industry, but I do think that it's a big benefit when I started doing this, and that is scheduling. I used to just kind of wing it. I've got these projects. I maybe write down the deadline on a note, but when things started getting busy enough that I had 5, 6 projects going at once, meetings every 3 days. I couldn't just like coast into it. When it became a legitimate professional, when this was my profession, when this became my career, I started having to keep a calendar. It originally started as I think my wife at the time bought me one of those like paper flip book calendars, and eventually that got graduated into a dry erase calendar that I keep on my, like, literally right above. I'm looking at it right now. It's right above my my monitor, my workspace, because when someone asks me if they can have a meeting, or if we can have a playtest session, or if basically that kind of conversation comes up, if I'm sitting here on a Zoom call or whatever, I can just look up and go, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't have any deadlines on that month. For the next 3 weeks, no, I can't meet on Thursday because I've got this thing. It is, now, I put almost all of my gaming stuff on there, and all of my industry stuff, but I also occasionally put things on there like my stepdaughter's graduation party, because there are, in my industry, in my career, there are a lot of times where someone will be like, hey, I can't meet during the week. Can we do a quick Zoom interview or something on Saturday? Can you do my podcast on Sunday? And if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to tell somebody that I'm available, if I'm going to tell somebody, yes, that's a good time for the meeting, or yes, that's a good time for the playtest session, or yeah, sure, I'll come do digital panels at your show, I need to be able to put that in the schedule and make sure that it happens. So, like, just to tell you, I can't show you the calendar. I thought my brain went, oh, I could just pick up and show you my schedule. But there's a bunch of stuff on there that's protected by NDA. So no, I'm not going to do that. But if you were to notice, or if you were to look at this, you would look at, I keep things color coded. If it's written in green, it means that that's a project that's supposed to start that day. If it's written in red, that's a project that is supposed to end that day. That's the deadline for that project. If it's written in magenta, it has something to do with my son. If it is written in dark blue, it is a physical, personal, like, I have to leave the studio event, whether it is a meeting or a doctor's appointment, or Ace's graduation party, or a D&D game that a non-virtual D&D game. Basically anything that takes me, that I know for a fact that I'm not going to be in the studio. Doctor's appointments always go up on there. If it is in light blue, it is a digital meeting of some kind, and that is probably, looking at my calendar right now, that is probably the predominant color across the board, because I have a lot of meetings. I have a lot of, I do Discord time specifically for certain companies. That's written on here, and so is any time that I've got a digital playtest, or a standing meeting, or so there's just a lot of time. My work week, I spend at least 2 hours a day not working, because I'm in meetings, or doing my office hours on Discord. And on Wednesdays are my worst days. I've got like almost 4 hours of meetings in an 8-hour workday. So I generally don't get a lot done on Wednesdays, and because I know that, I can look at my calendar, and when someone says, hey, are you busy on this day, or do you have time on this day, I can generally just glance up and go, nah, that's not a great day for me, because of I've got other things scheduled. Can I talk to you about blah blah blah? And I think that goes not just for your own personal well-being, but also for your projects, for the projects that you're working on. They will benefit greatly if you don't overlap big, heavy deadlines. If you know that you've got this really crazy, super tough project that's due next week, and someone calls you up and says, hey, I need a real fast conversion from this system to the next system would probably be just a couple of days worth of work, a couple $100, you know, and you look at it and go, all right, that's going to fall right in the middle of, you know, the super crunch time manual part 2. I probably shouldn't. Or you ask the client, can it wait a week? Because again, a lot of times, very rarely is a company going to fly so close to the sun and keep their deadlines so tight and so precise that they're going to reach out to you and go, I need things in 3 days. That's very rare. I mean, it has happened, but it's more often than not, it is, hey, are you interested in this project? Here's the timelines we're looking at. And because if you've got a schedule set up, you can actually look at that project in relation to the rest of the things that you've already got on the books, and frankly, add it to the schedule if you take it on, thereby adjusting it for the next person that calls or the next project that comes up. Scheduling is absolutely important. Now, I am bad at this. Not bad at the schedule. The schedule's not. I'm bad at overbooking, where I take on way too much and then end up having 12, 14-hour days in the studio for like 3 or 4 days in a row. But even though I am bad at overbooking, I do my best to make sure that I know where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be working on, what needs to be a priority all the time. Very rarely do I find myself working on something and then go, wasn't there something else I was supposed to be doing? Oh no, I forgot X, because I can't forget about it. It's written on my calendar right in front of me. So, yeah. So bullet point number 2, scheduling. Scheduling really is important, and it's important for the project, but it is also important for other people to know. So, as a side note, mentioned, you know, well, before we move on, so I've got this dry erase calendar. I also have a Google Calendar set up through with my wife and my kids, and when we pay the bills and all the stuff that's not necessarily industry related, but it means that my wife can glance at that and know, oh, Bryan's got a meeting, or oh, Bryan's going to be in a convention, because I don't want my career to necessarily be the absolute dictation or the rules that everybody has to live by, but I also want to make sure that she knows when I have things that I have to be doing, things that have to happen, or if she glances and goes, okay, cool, he's got a convention here and a convention here, and there's only like 4 days between them. She knows not to, unless it's like a doctor's appointment or something, probably not to schedule anything for those 4 days, because I'm probably going to be, you know, head down and work between those 2 shows. So it's just, scheduling is very important for you and all the people that rely on you, whether it's clients or family. Keeping a good and detailed schedule is really, really, it'll give you a leg up on just about any other aspect of your time management. All right, the last bullet point, and I call this this is definitely a bullet point that not that I struggle with, but I think there's a reasoning behind it, and that is, when you are at work, you need to be at work. So when you set yourself up, whether it's because of the schedule or because in my case I'm in the studio, I've got an on the air sign on the back of the door that, like, when I'm recording or on a meeting or anything, I flip that sign on to let Natalie and the family know, hey, Bryan is working. Now is not the time to knock on the door and tell me about the TV show you just watched, or now is not the time that you can, come into the studio and go, oh, hey, me and my friends built this amazing thing on Minecraft. Because working from home, oftentimes your friends and family will not realize the level of dedication that it takes, and that a simple task that is as easy as, hey, can you run across the street to go let out the neighbor's dogs? Sometimes something like that can tear you out of the moment so much that it ruins the next hour worth of your work. Maybe you were absolutely in the zone. Maybe you were doing a bunch of research and writing a bunch of notes, and then suddenly someone breaks in and breaks your train of thought. It is also, if this was a job that was at another location or at a business, like a business facility elsewhere, or if you were punching a clock at a factory or whatever, you would be at work. You would be in your workspace, and you wouldn't, if you were working at a bank, you wouldn't expect your kid to come to the bank and go, hey, let me tell you about my Minecraft thing. You wouldn't expect your significant other to say, hey, do me a favor. I don't feel like driving across town to get this thing. Can you go do that? That there is that separation of I am working, this is work. I need to be able to focus on my work. Please don't interrupt me. But there is also you are at work. Maybe don't sit there and watch 2 hours of TV when you're supposed to be working. Don't, if you're in a deadline, for me, I know me personally, if I'm in deadline crunch mode, normally I have my second screen on for like media or inspiration or checking emails, and I might throw something on Netflix or something just for background noise. And 90% of the time that's fine. It doesn't bother me or whatever. But if I'm in deadline or if I'm in crunch time on something where I really need to be focused and I need to not have my attention pulled away even for a minute, I know that I need to change gears and don't put movies on, put music on. Because music, I don't have to look at something. I don't have to decipher it. It's just going. It's just in the world. It's out there doing the thing. And that helps me dramatically, especially when I'm doing raw fiction, because I don't want my narrative brain to get caught up in whatever narrative. Even if it's something I've seen 1,000 times, it might still get caught up in a moment that's really cool. Or maybe I'll get inspired by something that's on the screen and be like, ooh, and want to go jot that down and lose my train of thought of what I'm working on. You've got to be honest with yourself if you are, quote, at work. If you're punching your own clock effectively, then you need to do that. Especially as you get more involved in the industry and pick up things like staff gigs or retainer gigs, especially now that remote work is more viable for some companies. You need to be honest. If you say to your employer, if you say to your client, I'm in the studio from 10 to 6 every day, or maybe you give yourself a little window and go, all right, you will be able to Zoom me between 10 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock at night Eastern Standard Time. I will be in the studio. Then you need to be in the studio. You need to be punching your own clock, keeping track of your own records. How much time are you putting into this project? I know I do a lot of consultation for games. Where I'm not actually doing deving or designing, but I'm helping a designer or I'm helping a developer get to where they want to go, and I charge an hourly rate. Now, I'm not going to charge that hourly rate if I'm not actually working. And in order for me to actually be working, I need to be able to go into work mode. The last thing I want to do is tell a client I'm doing, I've got setting aside X number of hours this week, and then I spent half those hours doing errands and messing around or whatever, because then I'm also not giving the project the attention it deserves, and I don't want to like stealing from the client, but I'm bilking them for funds that they could be using elsewhere on that project or otherwise, because I'm not giving them my full attention, because I've decided that although I'm at work, I'm not necessarily having to work at work. So I think that that's really my key bullet point is you need to, when you have decided that you have set yourself time, you've scheduled your time in your dedicated workspace, that if you're working, you're working. Don't say you're working and be sitting there doom scrolling on your phone, because that's not work unless you're making, TikTok the role-playing game. Dear God, please don't let that ever be a thing. I think that's probably one of the hardest mentalities to get over personally, is that, especially since you work for yourself, and if you're doing fun things, that you remind yourself that doing those fun things is fun, but it is also your job. And just like if you had a super fun job elsewhere, you need to put in the work, and you have to make sure that you're dedicated to that work. The other side of being at work, I mentioned before, is that when other people don't necessarily take your work hours as seriously as work hours, they just like, oh, well, you work from home, so you can do this thing. Oh, you work from home, you can drive me to the airport. Oh, you work from home, you set those boundaries. Let them know, no, I can't take you to the airport at that time. That's smack dab in the middle of my workday. And when they counter with, well, yeah, but you work from home, then you look at them and go, yeah, but I don't want to work until 8 o'clock that night because I had to take you to the airport. Like, just because you work from home, just because you work for yourself, just because you have a dedicated workspace that's there always available, doesn't mean you want to always be in there, because your schedule is what you make it. Now, doesn't mean that you can't do that favor for someone when they say, hey, can you take me to the airport in the middle of your workday? Doesn't mean that you can't, that you just shouldn't. No, it's a work day, I can't, because everybody does get paid time off. Regular work stuff. People get room for doctor's appointments and things. But just like them, you have to remind yourself that you're gonna have to make up that time somewhere. You're gonna have to make up that work that you missed from that. And so it's a game of checks and balances. Do you want to do that favor for your friend or family member, knowing that it does mean you're probably going to have to stay in the studio a little later? Do you want to take that, make it into one of your breaks, make it into an extended break, knowing that, you are going to be probably wasting a chunk of your day? It's up to you. But when you've decided, if you've made that decision that your workday, instead of being 10, like I said, 10 to 6, is going to be, 10 to 9 o'clock, but between 2 and 5 you're missing, that's going to be your break. As long as you've set yourself that schedule and you've made it that that's how your work time is going to be that day, then you can adapt. You can make it happen. You can you can make the thing happen. You just need to be realistic, and don't let people, this goes in all regular life, don't let people take advantage of your situation. Just because you are working hard at working remote for yourself, making your own schedule, don't automatically, when people assume that means that you can be whatever they need you to be at that time, whether it's a listening post to talk about their day, or I need to tell you about this thing, or there is no harm in looking at someone and saying, hey, can we have this conversation later? I'm kind of in the middle of work. You can be polite about it. You can let them know that it's you're interrupting my workday. I want to have this conversation with you, but maybe not right now. What time do you need to be at the airport? Can we leave a little early before I get my workday started? Or, that thing that we need to pick up across town, can it happen at 6 instead of 4? These are things that you need to, just like you would do if you had to punch a clock at a different job. You need to pay attention to when you're supposed to be working, and be working, and make sure other people know that you should be working. instead of doing whatever they've asked you to do. All right, cool. Those are my five bullet points, I think, for creating a successful at-home work environment. I know that there's more, and I know that we could talk all day about this, but I think those 5 points are enough to have you chew on, enough to start asking questions in the comments below, because that's what we want. We want comments. We want conjecture. Not to mention, considering this is the last week of April. God, effectively it's the last week of April, because the next episode comes out on May 1st. If you get into a conversation, you get entered in the comment raffle. So why don't you like, share, subscribe, and get part of the comment raffle? So now let's talk about the week in Bryan. It's been a week. It's been a good week, actually. So I got my my back brace for when I'm at conventions. It is huge and gnarly and weird, and I'll need to figure out a way to wear it not over over whatever shirt I'm wearing for a show or whatnot, because it's very big, it's very clunky, and I can't imagine standing around in that all day every day. So I need to test it. It is also expensive, but hopefully that will help when I have those long shows or those back-to-back shows. That'll help with not crippling me afterwards. Other than that, things are going well. Going back to the gym again. I need to get the thermostat guy out to reconnect my air conditioning to the new thermostat, because it is starting to get warmer out, and my house does a real good job of trapping heat and getting very muggy. So I'd rather not have fans running constantly, and having the opportunity to occasionally just cool the house off for a little bit. Yeah, I think that's it for personal. Nothing else that I can think of. Nothing nothing fancy. Nothing that I can talk about anyway. Hobby-wise, I have done nothing. I know I said last week I was going to get my new Game Envy Light a try. I realize I'm in kind of deadline crunch mode for the Shadowrun novel and the Throne World source book for Intergalactic Heroes. So I have not had the time to go and enjoy myself. I've put a couple models together, but actually painting them? Not recently. Gaming-wise, this last weekend I got to play in my wife's game, my wife's D&D game. There's some trials and tribulations with that game right now, because we've got some player communication issues and things. A new player came in. This particular chapter of her game was very outer planar. We were doing a bunch of kind of big celestial stuff. I'm kind of hoping now that section seems to be more or less done, that we get back to feeling a little bit more like a D&D game. I mean, not that it was a D&D, but get a little further away from some of the high end, Demon King, Angel Lord, Vampire Queen, those sorts of things. Kind of want to get back to her world, not so much her cosmos, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it does. We had a good time, though. A new player introduced his character, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. There was one thing that Natalie introduced in the game that I'm still not 100% on. The designer in me is yelling. And I'm trying not to be that jerky husband that's I am a game designer, and I know this is going to be a problem. But I do need to get my head around it, I think. One of my... what I may do, actually, maybe next week that'll be my topic, is... there's been, on a different podcast that I listened to, someone had asked about what happens when a character can't be there. What do you do with the absentee player? the absentee character because the player is absentee. And Natalie came up with a very interesting mechanic, but I do think that it requires a lot of wink, wink, meta, meta. Let's not play our characters the way that they would be played if this happens, because we know that it's an out of character thing that's taking place. I think that maybe I think maybe next week I'll do an episode completely devoted on potential ways to deal with a player not being at the table, short term and maybe even long term. Definitely short term. Long term's easy; you just write the character off. Short term, that's far more difficult because they're still supposed to be there for the scene, because the scene is ongoing. Yeah, that'll be next week's topic. But that's really all the gaming I did, other than some playtest stuff that took place. Yeah. And then for the work stuff, I'm smashing out the end of my new Shadowrun novel. I've probably got maybe 2 weeks left before that's done. Which would be awesome. That'll be nice to get that in the can and be done with it. Not because I'm tired of working on it, but because it's payday. No, it's way overdue. John, the editor over at Catalyst, has been really, really good about flexibility on when this, because since it's not a meta novel, it's not tied to any particular storyline or adventure book or anything like that. It can kind of come out whenever. So it is cool that he's like, yeah, we need to get it in the books because there's a slot where we would like to have a Just for Fun book. So I need to get that done. And anytime that you get a project finished and off to editing, even though I know that at some point I'll have to go back through and ratify the edits and whatever, it's a big sigh of relief that I can cross that project off the list. The Intergalactic Heroes source book for the Throne World Saga is almost done. The only thing it really needs now is a pile of stat blocks, which that's what I'm working on now. And that's always fun because you get to create a bunch of cool creatures and stat out NPCs and stuff. I love doing that. Obviously Xeogenesis, I just handed in the newest playtest revision for the Org, the third faction. Started a little bit of preliminary work on the fourth faction. And Warzone is warzoning. Getting ready here pretty soon to see this whole one-page rules different avenue to use your Warzone models and open up some hopefully new clientele and new player base and get some more attention on our wonderful game as we move closer to Origins to find out how we do in the Origins Awards. So a lot of work, but you will note that it's a little less. Feels a little easier, I am starting to try and build myself. I'm trying to take my own advice and build in some time of where I don't have to be slammed forever and a day. So there you go. Until next week, please be safe. Wear your mask, get your shots, don't lick doorknobs, be a good person, ignore some of the drama, and fight the baddies. Just try and leave every room a little happier than when you got there. I think it'll be all right. Until next week, have fun. Play some games, because I will. See you guys.